When did you guys all become Bible experts, where you're now judging everybody else? This is the ego, pride, and haughtiness that we end up with when we think we find out something. It's not bearing good fruit. I'll let you know, I'm going to confess, I did all the same things you did. When I first came into this, I tried to figure out the calendar. And you know what? I came up with one. Because we would have had, him dying on Wednesday, Thursday's the holy day, Friday was prep day, Saturday the Sabbath, and then he would have risen at around 3 o'clock Saturday. And so what I wanted to do on Shabbat services, because I came up to teach around that time, I was going to come up and go, he's arisen! Because it would have been, no, that doesn't really match our idiom very much, does it? No. Okay, anyway, but it would have been funny. Okay, so, and not so much funny, it was great. It was probably around 3 in the afternoon on Saturday. So, if you've never done that count, you need to understand 3 days and 3 nights is what it says would be his sign. He said he's only going to give one sign. So if he messed this up, then forget it, right? He said, I'm only going to give you one. 3 days and 3 nights. So no, you can't get that from Good Friday to Sunday, okay? You can't get 3 days and 3 nights. You get about a day and a half, all right? You got Friday night, you got all of Saturday, and then sometime into Sunday morning. So that's really not 3 days and 3 nights, okay? Now, what you do need to understand is that to get that, you would have had him killed on a Wednesday, taken down, right? It says around the 9th hour, so about 3 o'clock. And then they would have had their Passover meal. Unleavened bread would be Thursday, so nobody would go by the tomb on a holy day. Friday's prep day, nobody was going to go by the tomb on Friday. Saturday, of course, is Shabbat. Nobody's going by the tomb on Shabbat. When they show up on Sunday, he's already gone, is what the angel says, right? The messenger says, well, he's been gone. You know, he's not here. He didn't say, oh my gosh, you just missed him. Okay? If you'd just been a little quicker. Well, it says they got there right at the beginning, right at dawn. I mean, they got there at the beginning when it first got light enough for them to go. Well, because he'd already resurrected on the afternoon before. Now, but then we have this Omer count thing. I can give you the right count for the 3 days, 3 nights. I can't give you the definitive end-all, be-all answer as to when to start counting. Look at me, people looking at what? Because our resource, our source, doesn't give it to us. You can argue all you want. You get all mad at me. When we posted the Omer Count Challenge and we talked about, day 1 in the posting, there were people that said, wait a minute, you're not counting right. It's not day 1 yet. You can't start counting here in the middle of the week because they want to count starting with that Sunday. Okay, because then when you count the 7 weeks, that way you end up on a Sunday. Okay, now, so let's look at what the scripture actually says about counting the Omer. It actually doesn't say very much, but let's see what it says. Okay, so first of all, we begin in Leviticus 23, which is what tells you to do the counting, right? When we're reading this, let's follow through on the order of what's going on here. It says, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between the evenings is the Passover. On the 15th of the month is the festival of unleavened bread. 7 days you eat unleavened bread. On the first day you have a set-apart gathering. You don't do any work. And you bring an offering made by fire for 7 days. And on the 7th day is a set-apart gathering. You do no servile work. And Yahweh said to Moshe, do you know that in between each new thing is, and Yahweh said to Moshe? So we should get a sense that the thought had just completed about unleavened bread. Then he says, speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, shall reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest, and he shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. And on that day, when you wave the sheaf, you shall prepare a meal, etc. Okay, so what day are they? Why? I know that they did this even in Yeshua's day. Why do they think that this is connected to unleavened bread? except that that's what everybody's always done, as far as we are familiar with. There's nothing in here that connects it to unleavened bread. Is there? There's not a single thing here that, as a matter of fact, unleavened bread has been finished in the discussion. It doesn't say that unleavened bread finished, but I mean, is this chapter, is it not chronological? As it takes feast by feast by feast? Because the next one is going to be discussed will be then Shavuot, and then trumpets, and then atonement, and then Sukkot. So let's understand that we don't even know why it's connected to unleavened bread. I mean, I'm sure the sages wrote something about it or somebody came up with something, but it's certainly not here in the verse. So I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying is before you get so dogmatically in my face about stuff, realize you're doing that about something that you can't even prove to me you're supposed to count during unleavened bread Saturday if you want to make the Saturday argument. You can't. You can't make that case from anywhere in Scripture. Okay? You just can't do it. Now, you're going to say, well, Yeshua was the wave sheaf, and we don't have any verse that actually says that he was the wave sheaf. We can always read things into it. Well, this is a type and a shadow. That's fine, but we have no openly straightforward statements of this. Now, look what it says here. After it discusses the offerings, okay, it said on the morrow after the Sabbath. Then we drop down to verse 15. It says, and from the morrow after the Sabbath, whatever that is, from the day after you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourself 7 completed Sabbaths. 7 completed Sabbaths. Until the morning after the 7th Sabbath, you count 50 days. Then you shall bring a new grain offering to Yahweh. Now, that sounds so easily to understand, right? You're counting 7 Sabbaths. That's 7 Saturdays, and then you do it on the following day, which is a Sunday. So starting after a Sabbath is a Sunday, finishing on a Sunday. That's your 50 days. The Hebrew phrase there is Sheva Shabbatot. And it talks about being 7 completed weeks. Now, I'm going to make a case for both things. The straightforward, simple way, maybe you say, okay, it's talking about Saturdays. I have no problem, by the way, with that argument. Well, then why don't you do that, Rabbi? Because we've chosen, in the making the calendar decision teaching, to do the Hillel, the second calendar. Okay, that's what we have chosen to do, which was created by the Sanhedrin, by Hillel II, for the dispersion, which is what we are. So I'm just respecting that authority. Okay, you don't have to. Maybe some anti-Semitism in there, I don't know, whatever, but you don't have to respect that. If you don't want to, I'm just telling you that was part of my choice. It's all in that one single part teaching called making the calendar decision. Now, both options are easy to make a case for. You don't think so, but they are. Sheva Shabbatot. Let's go to chapter 25. This is still in Leviticus, chapter 25. He starts in the beginning, he says, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which I give you. By the way, did you notice that the instruction about the wave sheaf wasn't even to be done until they came into the land? It wasn't something they were doing while they were wandering around. He says, when you come into the land, you're going to do this. Okay. Now, it says, when you come into the land which I give you, the land is going to observe a Sabbath. That's interesting how the land's going to do that. And it's now going to be described in terms of years, right? 6 years you're going to do things, and on the 7th year you're going to have a rest. That's verse 3 and 4. So now we're not talking about weeks or Saturdays. We're talking about counting years. Now watch this. It says in verse 8, and you shall count 7 Sabbaths of years for yourself, 7 times 7 years, and the time of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be 49. And then on the 50th year, you're going to call and declare the Jubilee. Now, do you know, see again, we come to this as arrogant, haughty, whatever. Americans mostly do this worse than anybody, thinking that we know everything because we just can read the English. But it wasn't written in English. Okay? Now, do you know that the phrase here in verse 8 is Sheva Shabbatot? So why aren't they counting Saturdays? Well, it's talking about years. So how do you know which year is which one? Arbitrarily the seventh one, counting from wherever they started. 7 complete sevens. Okay? So here's the phrase Sheva Shabbatot. Same exact as Leviticus 23, 2 chapters earlier. So an argument could be made that they were talking about counting sevens. And when you group sevens together, the last one, if you're resting on it, is called Sabbath, or Shabbat. Okay, when you rest on the last one of a 7 series, it's a Shabbat. That's the way he's describing it. Now bear in mind, okay, we're talking about, again, this counting of weeks, or we're talking about counting of years. Now, what you may not also realize, you may not understand, is that calendars didn't always have 7-day weeks. Not every culture had a 7-day week. It's changed many, many times where people have tried and experimented with different configurations as they would group out days and then moons and then years, okay? Months and then years. And so this group of people is being told you're going to count 7 complete groups of 7. Why would you have to say that? Well, because depending on if you didn't start on a Saturday, you need to know you're counting complete 7 days. 7 sets of 7. Because we call a 7-day grouping a week. Okay? And so there can be a case made that you can count starting any day, not saying any day randomly, I'm saying but any day counting a 7-week is still is counting Sabbaths. From that point of view, I'm not saying that you keep them as Sabbaths. He said you're counting 7 complete groups of 7 weeks. Now, because that matches up now with 25 when you're counting years. Of course, then the tradition becomes for that one to start after the holy day Sabbath. Okay? So we're counting after a Sabbath, because the holy days are Sabbaths, and we're counting 7 complete weeks from that Sabbath. Okay, and so this time, if we're doing it according to that way, we started with a holy day on a Thursday. So then that means that Friday is day 1, okay, of your count. And day 2 would be the actual weekly Sabbath, right? And we continue forward with that. Okay, so that is how that one way of counting would work. But I want you to understand, I'm not here to argue that one is right and one is wrong. I'm telling you that what I'm doing and what I've chosen to do, a case can very easily be made for it. Okay? Actually, you know what? I can make a better case for counting either of those 2 ways than I can for when you should start. Like actually which Saturday or which holy, because if it's a holy day, it has to be after the first or last day of unleavened bread. Those are your first holy days. If it's a Saturday, is it the Saturday in the middle of unleavened bread? What if unleavened bread starts on a Saturday? Which it has done. How does that work? Then it's the same for both. Do you know in Yeshua's day, see, we take this for granted. We make jokes about it, how, like the car joke, how they were all in one accord on Pentecost, on Shavuot. But that statement is powerful because all of them were keeping the same calendar that year. Because the way they were doing it, they would have been waiting to wave the sheaf until Sunday. They wouldn't have waved it on Thursday, the holy day. They wouldn't have waved it on Friday, the preparation day. They wouldn't have waved it on Shabbat. They would have waved it on Sunday. Now, Hillel's calendar doesn't take that into account, so we started our count on Friday, okay? But just understand, that would have put them all on the same calendar the way they would have been doing it, when they were actually physically bringing a wave sheaf offering. Again, this is us doing the best we can. Understand Exodus 12, it talks about this is the beginning of your calendar. I'm going to teach you a calendar you guys have lost touch with. Do you not think that at the beginning of their Exodus, when they got a new calendar or a reset of the calendar, that when we get our Exodus, we may not get the same thing? And of course, I got a bunch of you guys out there with YouTube posts thinking you're the ones resetting the calendar. Nah, it came from above. It was the thus said Yahweh. It wasn't thus said somebody who thought he figured something out. Okay, do you read in Exodus 12 that Moses figured it out? No, he was told. Okay? Now, he wasn't some random person told. He was the one that was going to be leading. Okay, so all of you random people, stop thinking you're the ones who were told. Okay, it doesn't work that way. We're going to wait for him to come back and he'll set everything straight. And we're going to do it the best we can. But I just want you to have some compassion and patience and allow for other people to see things a little different than you instead of posting how wrong we are on our posts. And what we're going to do is simply respond to those posts with this clip. And then say, hey, appreciate what you said, understand where you're coming from, but you might want to watch this clip, okay? So again, that phrase that's being used to say, this is how we know we start on a Saturday, and we start on a Sunday, end on a Sunday, that same phrase is for counting years. How are you working those Saturdays out there? There are no Saturdays there, okay? But it's the day you rest. Okay, now. So let's say, okay, so you only should be counting your days that you rest each 7 times. He says you start counting the day after, and then you go for 7 complete weeks. Doesn't mean each week has to be the Sabbath. It certainly could be. Again, I'm not attacking that way of counting. Just kind of keep this in mind. I'm not trying to be dogmatic about things I can't prove definitively, okay? Maybe you'll learn to respect that, all right? Too many people out there teaching speculation is fact. Everything about Shavuot's count is us trying to figure out what they did because it does not say. Not the way you want it to, okay? It just does not. And hopefully we can accept that. Why did he do that? Because he wants us to need revelation from him down the road when he decides to bring it and share it. He also wants to see what I call our, the wisdom in our wilderness walk. What kind of wisdom will we use in the wilderness? See, I think wisdom says that for right now, when in doubt, when there is no clarity, we might want to look to see what the ones who've been doing it the longest, how they do it. Okay? And in the Jewish community, generally, they keep the Hillel calendar. And so that's what we do. Does that have us perfectly on the new moon? No, it does not. Okay? And by the way, for everybody who wants to argue conjunction versus sliver, every ancient writing has them going into courts and arguing about their sighting of the moon. Okay? There's no record of people walking in and saying, it's dark for a day or 2 days, which day, whatever day, 3 days, when we start counting the moon. All of the ancient Jewish writings all talk about, and there were actually witnesses that had to come and they had to go to courts and say and verify that they saw what they saw. Okay, you can't see a conjunction. All right? That doesn't mean you can't calculate it. I didn't say that because people say, well, but you can calculate. But that's not what they're. The courts weren't about people's math calculations. They were there to witness that they saw something. And that needed to be done when the skies were not clear everywhere and not everybody could see wherever they were. They needed people to come in and say, we saw it. All right? That's how it actually was done. You can argue all you want. All right? Now that I stirred up all of that, I want you guys to really get something out of your Omer count. I want you to do your Omer count. I want you to go through the life transformation exercise and be inspired to really work on yourselves, because that's really the key to all this. All right? But as far as calendar stuff, we could argue about that all day long, all night long, and everything else. I watched some pretty interesting videos. Not interesting in terms of the information, interesting in the ridiculous ways people argue these things, okay? I mean, absolutely ridiculous ways people argue these things. And, they will argue that we should be using a solar lunar thing. We should be using an Enochian thing. We should be doing it based on Jerusalem time. We should be doing it based on the full moon, not the new moon. Seriously? When did you guys all become Bible experts? Where you're now judging everybody else. Okay? This is the ego, pride, and haughtiness that we end up with when we think we find out something. It's not bearing good fruit. I'll let you know, I'm going to confess, I did all the same things you did. When I first came into this, I tried to figure out the calendar. And you know what? I came up with one. And you know what? We did that calendar. You can ask Shamash Uncle Bob. We did that calendar. Okay, this goes back 25 years. And you know what? I realized I'm doing Hillel because of so many reasons. Okay? Abba put us in a world where the world recognizes Hillel. In other words, when you tell your boss you're taking off for Shabbat, and Shabbat is Saturday, they understand. If you're doing some sort of rotating solar lunar calendar, the lunar Sabbath, and now this month it's Tuesday, and next month it's Friday, and the next month it's Wednesday, that's not going to be functional. He knew we were going to be in this dispersion. You can't do that calendar unless you work for yourself. And so understand I have reasons, and it's all in that teaching, right, making the calendar decision. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. I respect all of you that do the count after the Saturday from Sunday to the 50th day on a Sunday. No issue with that. You can be right, okay? I just want you to understand that we can also, okay? Because here it's not about being right when it's hard to know how right really is, because I just showed you in Leviticus 23, unleavened bread is over. I mean, it could be as simple as, you ready for this? That whenever your harvest is, that's when you cut your wave sheaf, and that's when you start counting from that Sabbath. Maybe it is a Saturday Sabbath, but maybe it's from whenever the harvest is ready. Maybe it has nothing to do with unleavened bread. Ooh, wouldn't that be challenging? Okay? But then it puts us on Shavuot. So when's Shavuot? Well, people say, well, the reason they didn't name it as Sivan 6 is because it kind of floats. It's different. That way, you don't always end up on Sivan 6. Because when you count from the Saturday, from that Sunday after that Saturday, it does move around. It's always on a Sunday, but it's not on the same date. Okay, because that Saturday could fall somewhere different on the calendar. Whereas if you do it after the holy day, you're always on Sivan 6. So why didn't he tell us Sivan 6? I don't know. Maybe because he wanted us to struggle with these things. I think he lets us have lots of stuff to chew on and struggle with. He wants to see how much pride and ego gets in the way of this stuff. Look, I've told you this. You want my opinion? I think we should be counting after the last holy day. Doesn't say that anywhere. You want to know something about my weird calendar? What kind of moon is the first day of unleavened bread? Full. What kind of moon is the first day of Sukkot? Okay, there are 3 pilgrimage feasts. Unleavened bread, Sukkot, what's in the middle? Shavuot. What kind of moon is Shavuot on? No, it is not. It is not full. It's a week short of being full, or several days, or whatever, depending on if you're doing the Saturday one or the first holy day one. If you're doing it after the first holy day, you are short a week. How do you know that, Rabbi? Because how many days in a moon cycle? 29. How many days do you count for Shavuot? 50. So guess what? 50 plus a week puts you exactly from 1 full moon to 2 full moons later. But you start counting after the first holy day, now you've not gotten to 57 or 58 yet. You're off by a couple of days. I mean, you're dead on the full moon for the other 2. But if you count after the last holy day, what's happened? 7 days have already passed. You're on the 8th day. You're starting to count. 50 days out, bang, you're on another full moon. And to me, that makes more sense because he finished talking about unleavened bread. No, we're not changing to this calendar. But I'm just trying to show you there's another thing you didn't think about. All of your being so adamant about thinking you're so smart and you figured it out and how wrong I am. Well, how about what I just threw out there? Because you might answer it like Tom did and go, full moon for Shavuot. But no, it's not. No, it doesn't fall on the full moon. Unless the last holy day is that one Saturday. And then you're going to go the day after that. But why wouldn't it be always the same? Every first day of unleavened bread and first day of Sukkot is full moon. Always. Again, I'm like you. I could come up with stuff. I can come up with all kinds of reasons why the calendar's wrong or this calendar's wrong. I can actually, you know what? Any calendar you throw at me, I will show you where it's wrong. Not where it's wrong, period, but where it falls short. The places you missed and didn't realize your calendar doesn't work. How do I know that? Because I've seen as many as you can see, all right, in 30 years of doing this. I've seen a lot of calendars. But I just want you guys to have respect for everybody making the best effort they can. Amen? Amen. Now, there are other issues, though, for you. How about your understanding of vertical structure and submission? If you're in a group that keeps a particular calendar, where's your respect for the leadership of that calendar? I'm not saying this group only. I mean, if you're watching, you go to some other group somewhere. Should there be 3 different calendars being done in the same group? Doesn't make any sense at all. The problem is you're too adamant that you're right. And I can promise you that all of us are going to, when Yeshua sets it right, are all going to be like, okay. I missed that piece. Where's the humility to recognize that that's going to be the potential there? And look, and we've had lots of Sukkots where we went to other properties and we've had people come and visit, and we said to them always the same thing. If you don't keep our calendar, get out. No, I'm sitting. No, we've always said the same thing. If you don't keep our calendar, do whatever you do, just don't make a big issue about it. Do it in your campsite or whatever it is. Do it yourself. And if you would, show respect as a group, come do with us when we do. Be with us when we do, but if you need to do something a little different, go do it. Just don't make it don't create division in the body, okay, in the camp. We always respected people doing whatever they did. Okay, you're not on the same schedule with us for whatever reason. You did the conjunction, you did the this, you did the even the sighted moon doesn't match up perfectly with Hillel. Hillel is a mathematical calculation that goes back to the 300s. Okay, so it's been a little bit. And yet it still is just about dead on most of the time. For a math equation, it's pretty good, all right? Especially considering when it was created. Now, that being said, hopefully that gives you enough to chew on, and hopefully that answers the question a little bit, and you can show respect for this is how we are doing this count to Shavuot. And sadly, we've lost some people that stopped coming over the years because of this one issue, and that's sad, okay? That is sad, because hopefully I gave you a little bit of a sense today that maybe you haven't thought the whole calendar thing through like you thought you did. Maybe there's a little bit more to it. Believe me, I'm just scratching the surface of what I could throw at you. I just don't want you to be dizzy, okay? Because when it comes to studying, I'm like anybody else that you might think you're a good studier. I do dig into things everywhere I can get it. I dig, all right? So I don't want you to think that, well, you're just Jewish and you just do the Hillel calendar. Oh, no. I used to do a different calendar. One I liked, that I created, that answered all my issues the best I thought they did. Okay? And I thought it worked pretty good. But yet, you notice I've chosen not to use it. That should make you go, okay?